Mm-hmm. 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 Let's go.
You already know what you're listening to and who I am, so no need to introduce myself. When I picked today's storyline, I thought this was going to be a fun one because I remember it when it happened in like the complete media circus that unfolded, all the late night talk shows picking up the story and doing little bits on it. And to be honest, the people involved were characters. But after a few years of the story having died down in the passage of time and the growth of humanity as a species, it turns out that this story is actually all too tragic and sad. This is the shooting of Mary Jo Buttafuoco.
And we all got dreams, we all want things. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be? And do you believe you can do anything? But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Mary Jo Connery was born May 15, 1955 to Irish Catholic parents. Born in the 50s to Irish Catholic parents, we can probably surmise her upbringing was strict, conservative, and involved a lot of time in church. When she was in the 9th grade, she failed social studies and had to go to summer school, and that is where she met the larger-than-life Joseph Buttafuoco, whom she would marry in 1986, and she got a job as a bank teller after high school. Joey Buttafuoco, whose name just rang a whole lot of bells with listeners from my generation, was born March 11, 1956 in Massapequa, New York, and was definitely larger than life, even at only 5'11", with his big hair, signature Daniel Hector sweatshirts paired with patterned baggy sweatpants, and Mary Jo was instantly smitten with him and his funny and gregarious personality. An Irish Catholic and Italian American living together in Long Island, the stuff of movies. And believe me, it was, as we'll get to. Mary Jo and Joey had 2 children together, Paul and Jessica, and life was always fun but a bit chaotic. Joey, right after high school, worked at his dad's auto body shop called Complete Auto Body, and the shop that he would later take over. He was making a nice little living for his loving and loyal family, and they were able to buy a house, a cute little 2-story white house with an attached garage, a nice upper deck and large backyard. It wasn't a grand house, but it was nice and clean and spacious for a growing family. It's a bit hard to pin down if the family moved around much, but Massapequa appears to be the place that the family was both born and raised, which is on the south shore of Long Island, just west of Amityville. Lots of cute 2-story houses, and the Buttafuocos lived in such a house. And Tuesday, May 19th, 1992, was a sunny and clear day, and Mary Jo decided it was a good chance to get some work done in the yard, so she headed out to the backyard to paint a couple of benches. Joey had gone to work, and Paul and Jessica were at school. Jessica remembers the day as the first day her and Paul were allowed to ride their bikes to school. But Paul had returned to the house reluctant to leave, just feeling something was wrong. Mary Jo asked him if he had everything, and he did, and so she said, well, then get going. And he did, but still feeling apprehensive for a reason that he couldn't pinpoint. And while painting the bench, she heard the front doorbell ring, and she took a look through the house from the sliding doors of the backyard and saw a teenage girl at the door. And when she opened the door, she can see this dark-colored car in the driveway with a man in it. The girl, who she doesn't recognize, asked her if she was Mrs. Buttafuoco. She says yes, and the girl says, I'm here to tell you that your husband is having an affair with my little sister. Shocked, she says, your little sister? How old are you? And the girl said that she's 19 and her sister is 16. To bolster her claim, she shoves at her a Complete Auto Body t-shirt that she says she found in her sister's bed when she was making it. Mary Jo, always an admitted smartass, said under her breath, you still make your sister's bed. What's your name? And she said Anne-Marie, and gave a street name of where she lived, but pointed in the opposite direction from that street. Mary Jo wasn't so much disbelieving that Joey would have gotten mixed up in something, but not an affair with a 16-year-old child, and figured this girl was lying for some reason. But Mary Jo had no plans to fling all of Joey's things in garbage bags from the balcony over it, and said to her, look, I don't know what you expect me to do about this, because I was raised a good Catholic girl, and asked her to leave. She then turned to go back into the house and was stopped in her tracks by a loud explosion of white in her head before everything went black. and the mysterious girl got back into the car and the man took off. Neighbors heard the shot and came running and called for help for a now unconscious and clinging to life Mary Jo. One of the neighbors called Joe at work, who came to the house in time to see a life helicopter take off from the beach with Mary Jo strapped to a gurney. The bullet had gone into the side of Mary Jo's face, breaking the jaw and severing her carotid artery and lodged just above her spinal cord. Doctors warned the family that it was unlikely that Mary Jo would make it through the night. And there was an option for surgery, but she would probably be blind or paralyzed, and they didn't know what, but she was very gravely injured. They opted for the surgery in hopes that she would at least survive. And now Mary Jo somehow managed to survive the 7-hour surgery and wake up a couple of days later. She couldn't speak, but she could write, and she wrote down what she could remember about the girl that had shot her. And when seeing her write about the t-shirt, Joey knew that he had only given one of those shirts out yet, and because they were new, and he had given it to his friend Elliot Fisher. Elliot Fisher had a teenage daughter, a 16-year-old named Amy. Mary Jo was shown a picture of Amy Fisher and identified her as the girl that shot her. But why? Joey was forthcoming that he knew her and had worked on her car and knew her dad, but not that he was having an affair with her, nothing like that. But the investigation moved quickly. The police had Joe phone Amy and tell her that his wife had been shot and he wants to talk to her, which she did, getting into the car and driving to the meeting place where she was quickly arrested and brought in for questioning, which is a bit strange because she was only 17 at the time and her parents were not notified of her arrest until the next day. Not only that, but she was paraded in her cut-off shorts and white t-shirt from the police car to the station with a barrage of media filming her, and thus started one of the biggest media circuses, perhaps only eclipsed by a slow-speed Bronco chase a few years later. Immediately and forever dubbed the Long Island Lolita and homewrecker extraordinaire. So who is this Amy Fisher? She had been born the only child of Rose and Elliot Fisher in August of 1974, a family blended between Catholic and Jewish heritage, and a student at John F. Kennedy High with average grades and a pretty normal class upbringing in Merrick, New York. A bit entitled, getting a car at 16 from her parents and a rather long leash, Amy had come to the Complete Auto Shop because she was a pretty bad driver, always bumping into things, and Elliot had told Joe to just take care of things when she came in and he would pay the bills. Now, Joey would do the I did not have sexual relations with that woman thing, but he did. But the affair was short-lived. Basically, Joey thought she was cute, worth the risk to his family and reputation, and one day after fixing her car, he drove to her parents' house where he had sex with her. Now, at the time she was 16, so that was a crime for him, but not for her. So the whole she's a homewrecker thing is a bit of a joke because she wasn't old enough to consent, and Joe should have known better. But it was the 90s when if you wore cut-off shorts, you were asking for it. She might have been ready and willing and able, but it doesn't change the fact that a 36-year-old man having sex with a 16-year-old woman is criminal. Wearing track pants with Sylvester the cat on them doesn't make you 16. The media descended on the Buttafuoco household, and everyone quickly forgot that Mary Jo had narrowly survived a serious shooting in the head, and the focus came to be on Amy as this obsessed homewrecker and Joe as this older man with a flashy lifestyle that was irresistible to a young woman. Now, I was born in 1971, and I was like 20 and legal at the time, and I wouldn't have touched Joey with this kind of slicked, puffy black hair and mullet with a 10-foot pole. But the media's game of who's the victim today saw it the way they wanted to. When questioned at first, Amy denied any involvement, but when faced with the evidence of the shirt, she said that Mary Jo had fought her for the gun and it just went off. The fail-safe, it was an accident defense. But police managed to track down a couple of guys that said that Amy had been begging them for months to help her kill Mary Jo, whom she felt was standing in the way of their dream romance. One of them, Stephen Sleeman, had gotten to know Amy through his friend Chris, who worked at the same restaurant that he was working at. Stephen was 21 at the time. Amy had been badgering Chris that he needed to help her kill Mary Jo because she was in love with Joey. Chris didn't want to do any of that kind of killing stuff. That was just nuts. But rather than go to the cops himself, he introduced her to Stephen, who he had heard had a gun. Chris, in his infinite wisdom, had told Stephen to just go along with her musings because if he does, Amy will have sex with him. And a 21-year-old shouldn't really want to have sex with a 16-year-old girl, but they often do. What can I say? Well, Stephen went along with it all right. About 7 months before the actual shooting, Amy told Stephen about her plan and that she was going to ring the doorbell on some kind of ruse, and when she comes to the door, he'll be hiding in the bushes and he'll shoot her with a rifle of all things. And to Stephen, this sounded just fine. And Mary Jo actually remembers a girl coming to the door one day selling chocolate bars. But Stephen got pissed off because Amy was standing in the front stoop and wouldn't give him a clear shot to Mary Jo. So he pulled out of any further planning. And of course, he was given legal immunity in exchange for this information. The media, they dubbed Stephen as the horny hitman. And by this time, Joey and Amy were both the writers for David Letterman's Dream, and you couldn't watch anything without some kind of reference to Amy Fisher or the name Buttafuoco. So Stephen wasn't facing any charges, neither was Chris, but Amy was seen with a man in the driver's seat of the car in the driveway. So who's that guy and what's his part in all of this? Well, his name, it turns out, is Paul Guagenti. Amy and some friends had gone to Brooklyn one day and had been introduced to him. Right away, she launched into her tirade about her love for Joey and her need to get rid of Mary Jo, which is a weird conversation icebreaker. But she asked him if he could get her a gun and offered him $800 to help her kill Mary Jo, and he said, sure, why not? And less than a week later, Amy faked being sick at school and left with Paul in his car and drove directly to the Buttafuoco house. And once tracked down by his license plate, he made a deal to work with the prosecution against Amy in exchange for a wee 4-month sentence for the illegal sale of a firearm. And things continued to get worse for Amy. While the defense was trying to paint her as this innocent little flower taken advantage of by an older man with a flashy mullet, which I will reiterate is still true, it was revealed that Amy had actually been working for an escort service for $100 an hour, and that probably explained the beeper that she always wore and people kept asking about it, and she was vague in her answers about. And then it got even worse. A 29-year-old skis-ball called one of the tabloid TV shows that were all the rage in the early 90s, and shameless in what they were willing to say about just about anyone, turned over a sex tape of him and Amy where he fully admits and is caught on tape negotiating a price for sex before secretly videotaping them. Amy may have shot a woman in the face, but Jesus, there seems to be no limit to how badly people will roll this girl through the mud, forgetting that she was only 16 at the time. But the victim blaming got worse and was now aimed at Mary Jo herself. Joey didn't actually come out and admit that he had sex with Amy until after Amy was convicted. Sorry, spoiler alert. So during all of this media circus, Mary Jo stood by Joey and defended him against accusations about his sexual relations with Amy, something Joe had sworn on his life and his children's lives didn't happen. But the media and anyone watching him saunter around and talk to the media like it was the Joey show knew that he was lying about that. So Mary Jo was raked over the coals as a naive and long-suffering wife, and quite frankly, they painted her as a bit of an idiot and not the loyal wife and devout Catholic that couldn't have considered divorce even if she wanted to woman that she actually was. And in September of 1992, another skis-ball named Paul Makeley, who was a gym rat, recorded a conversation with Amy Fisher, who was still just a kid at the time, where she was recorded as wanting to marry him so that he could come and visit her in prison and get conjugal visits, and that she wanted her name in the press because she could make a lot of money off of it. Quote, I figure if I'm going to go through all this pain and suffering, I'm getting a Ferrari. Now, part of her early defense was to claim that Joey had put her up to the shooting. But on December 2nd, 1992, she took a plea deal and got a sentence of 5 to 15 years. And in 2019, on appeal, this was shortened to a maximum of 10 years. And in the end, she served 7 years before being paroled that same year. Now, Joey denied having any sexual relations with Amy until she told prosecutors in February 1993 that it was rape, being that she was underage. It was, in fact, statutory rape, and regardless of any consent Amy may have felt that she was giving, wasn't valid and a rape case against him was reopened and she testified against him. He pled guilty in October 1993 and the gig was up for him, except that Mary Jo stayed with him and they relocated to California to get away from the media after his release from jail 4 months later. However, Mary Jo came to her senses and filed for divorce on February 3rd, 2003, having figured out that Joey was a large part of her problems. Joey never shied away from the media scrutiny and continued to make a joke out of the incident and Mary Jo's suffering. He was constantly granting interviews, including going on David Letterman. Perhaps part of the divorce was that in 2002, Joey went on Celebrity Boxing and was supposed to fight John Wayne Bobbitt, but instead fought and beat Joni China Laurier. In 2006, he reunited with Amy for a lingerie bowl, and in 2009 went on Judge Puro, where he sued an adult film star for her auto body invoice. He had already been on Judge Judy in 1997, but his legal problems continued to plague him. In 1995, he pleaded no contest to a solicitation of prostitution charge. He got a fine and was placed on probation for 2 years for that. In 2004, he was sentenced to a year in jail, 5 years of probation after pleading guilty to auto insurance fraud. After that, he was prohibited from working in the auto body industry in California for the rest of his life. In August 2005, he was charged with illegal possession of ammunition. And as a convicted felon, he was legally not permitted to own any ammunition. Probation officers found it during a search of his home. He pleaded no contest to that and began serving his sentence in January of 2007. And then was released at the end of April in 2007. And Amy, unfortunately, she continued to make questionable choices that didn't help her image and was no longer a teenager that could hide behind youth and naivety and that undeveloped brain thing. Can't see around corner stuff. After her release, she started a column in the Long Island Press and married Louis Balera in 2003, with whom she had 3 kids. They divorced in 2015. That was not the questionable choices part. In October 2007, Red Light District Video said that they were going to release another sex tape of Amy, this time with her husband, who was the one that sold the video to them. She sued them for copyright infringement. She actually settled with them and agreed to do a promotional appearance for them. She went on the Howard Stern show, but left after a phone call in from Mary Jo's daughter, Jessica. On January 12, 2009, Amy released a pay-per-view adult film called Amy Fisher, Totally Nude and Exposed. She signed a deal with Lee Entertainment to become a stripper, doing some club shows at least once a month. In September of 2010, Dream Zone Entertainment released the adult film Deep Inside Amy Fisher. As of 2022, Amy Fisher is still actively a webcam model. Mary Jo moved on a bit more quietly and with a bit more dignity. She wrote a book in 2009 called Getting It Through My Thick Skull, Why I Stayed, What I Learned, and What Millions of People Involved with Sociopaths Need to Know. She continued to have partial facial paralysis and was deaf in one ear. She underwent her final surgery in 2017 to repair some nerves and was finally able to smile again. She told Dr. Oz in 2017 about Amy, "She hasn't made good choices. That's her decision. I wish she hadn't. I forgave her. I forgave her more for me because, again, like I said, when you got this anger and this bitterness, you have to say, you know what? I can't keep you in my head anymore."